After Mom passed, Dad liquidated the estate, and one of the things given to me was this old Harrington and Richardson Model 88 shotgun. It's been a while since this thing has seen any love at all. Just wow. Can it be saved at all? Some of this rust is significant. The barrel has areas that are almost to the flaking point. The stock and the forend have small indentations and gouges, and the finish has been worn off. And look at the frame. I don't know what we're going to end up with, but here we go. I've already cleared the weapon and confirmed that the barrel is free from any obstructions. The first step is to remove this fore-end screw and remove the fore-end. After you get it removed, you'll want to check it for any cracks and such. Hardwoods such as walnut sometimes are predisposed to cracking. This one looks good though. This fore-end spacer, I noticed that one of the screws turns very easily, and when I get it out, the threads are full of wood. It's stripped. We'll fix that later though. Removing the stock from the frame, usually a simple process. There's only a single bolt, a tang bolt, but you do have to remove the butt plate to access it. Checking this out, it looks like a 9/16, but it's deep in there, so I'm going to need an extension. Once I have the stock removed, I give a quick look over to the tang. Check the threads, look for cracks in the stock. Everything looks good here. Once the tang and the spacer are removed, the frame just falls off from the barrel. So now comes the fun part, elbow grease, and removing all of that rust and scale. I start with a soft brass bristle brush. This isn't a museum piece. Brass is just fine for this. I'll follow up later with a 3000 grit sandpaper to remove the old bluing and to smooth out the smaller rust blooms. It will take a little time to get this back into the white. Rust is simply an oxidation of a metal, in this case basically iron, or actually a steel alloy. And it comes in different flavors. For iron, we have red rust and black rust. When zinc oxidizes, we get white rust. That's the fuzzy little powder you find on zinc fittings and such. Aluminum, as well as most other metals, also oxidize. In the United States, a common barrel alloy is chrome moly, but overseas, vanadium nickel is more preferred. There's advantages to each. Most of us are familiar with iron oxide, or at least the red rust flavor. But what is it? When iron is exposed to both water and oxygen, a chemical reaction takes place. With iron, the resultant molecule, for red rust, it's quite a bit larger than the original iron molecule, from 4 to 6 times. And this expansion or swelling causes the rust to bloom, or the scale, and then it flakes off. This exposes more in the white, and the process repeats. That's why a rusted gun barrel feels really rough. It is also why, as we know now, that when rebar rusts inside of concrete, there's nowhere for that expansion to go, and this trapped force eventually cracks and bursts the concrete into pieces. GM found this out in some of their now abandoned factories in Detroit. That is also why now, when concrete highways are poured, they now allow the rebar to rust a little bit before pouring the concrete. But black rust, or black oxide, is different. It is a chemical reaction, just like red rust, and it's not a plating or a coating, but it doesn't expand to any appreciable amount, so dimensionally the part size doesn't change. Perfect for guns or any high-precision equipment. As an example, if you leave iron parts in evaporust for too long, as I have, they develop a black rust finish. Anyway, the black oxide, much like aluminum oxide, provides some protection, not a lot, but some, against red rust, by basically making oxygen and water unavailable to the iron. But again, it's not a coating. It just forms a compound that doesn't accept any other molecules, like water or air. But oil, like water, has a surface tension, and the resultant blued finish helps to hold that oil. Be aware, though, that even a small scratch can remove this very thin black oxide layer and expose the white to atmosphere, oxygen and water, and the result will be red rust. Once I'm satisfied that the rust has all been loosened and removed, it's time to clean the white with alcohol or acetone. Either is quick drying. I'm using the acetone only because I have a gallon of it. Bluing is not a paint or a finish, so I'm not worried about lint. Here, paper towels are just fine. The important thing here, though, is to ensure that all grease, oil, or anything else that would interfere with the chemical process is removed. Use just a little bit of pressure and be thorough if you want a good job. And use a clean towel often. It just does not make sense to spread contamination on your prepared surface. To prevent rust from coming back, be sure to remove all of the rust, even on the internal parts. Scrape it off if you have to. Once you're happy that all of the rust is gone and the surface is free of contaminants, you can start the bluing process. It's odd, but there's a satisfaction that comes with applying the bluing and watching that transformation from the white to the blue. The camera just doesn't capture it. And you may wonder why I started out by pouring a small amount of product from the bottle. Because even though you've cleaned your iron with acetone or alcohol, it only breaks down the oils and such. There is still a residue of iron particles, which can be picked up on your applicator, and then you transfer it to the bottle. The contamination will build up enough to weaken the solution, making it less effective. You can see some of the change as I apply this bluing to the barrel, and it really is fascinating, to me anyway, to watch a clear liquid turn the metal to a dark gray or blue. I use a cheapo sponge brush to apply the bluing. It holds enough product and doesn't drip that much. Makes it really easy. Be sure to cover all of the exposed white, though. After the first coat, just wait about 30 seconds to a minute and rinse off with just plain cold tap water. I just rinse mine in cold water under the faucet. And then, to get the best results though, I use compressed air at a low pressure and blow off the parts to dry them each time that I apply bluing or rinse. Be sure to wear safety glasses and understand the hazards of compressed air. The second coat makes a marked improvement. But again, be sure to cover all of the part. And again, I use compressed air each time, just enough to evaporate any liquid and force it out of the cracks and crevices. Once it's dry enough, I take a polishing pad, like for knocking down varnish or something. I'm not attempting to get a shine here yet, only getting the surface to a good sheen for the next application. Notice that there is still just a hint of wet on the surface. Now I'm ready for the last coat, Each coat gives just a slightly darker appearance. This is because the solution is reacting with previously unbound iron, but again, this isn't a coating. Once the final application is complete, I again buff everything very lightly to level up the surface but not scratch through the application. To me, the finished barrel and frame, they look really good. And unless you know what you're looking for, there are almost no telltale signs of any rust. I'm satisfied with it. I'm going to let this dry in the sun for a while to help drive out the last remnants of moisture while I work on the wood. It's a beautiful fall day outside, so I'm just going to relax in the porch swing and take this old finish off and try to remove these small dings and gouges. I'm using a 150 grit. It's pretty aggressive, but I want to remove these small gouges and smooth things out. And also, it brings this old finish off quite easily. I chose a chestnut stain to go back on the wood. Not too dark, not too light. I didn't know what type of wood this was, but it wasn't a really hard wood. Some research says that it may be birch or possibly beech. My guess here would be the beech. And that's because the grain, it's relatively tight, but there aren't any dark blotches or stripes. The stock and the forend, they took the stain pretty good, so I'm satisfied with it. I'll let these dry in the sun for a few hours before applying a finish. Well, compared to what I started with, I think the results look really good. I'll give the wood finish a week or two to harden up and then apply a couple of gloss coats final. Meanwhile, I'll cover the black with the COP and dry it out. So guys, if you've inherited an old firearm that's showing signs of neglect, don't just sell it off at a fire sale price. With just a little time, effort, you can probably having it looking as good as new. Until next time, guys, be safe, be a good human, take care.